Rain tapped lightly against the metal roof of Mason's auto garage as the town of Granger, Texas, stirred into its slow morning routine. The scent of motor oil and worn leather hung heavy in the air, and the familiar clank of tools echoed like background music. Mason Ryder, a gruff man in his late 50s with grease-streaked hands and a heart that had grown weary with time, leaned against a rusty toolbox, sipping lukewarm coffee. He had seen all kinds walk into his garage: truckers, single moms, rich boys in muscle cars. But nothing quite prepared him for the skinny teenage girl who pushed open the door that morning. She couldn't have been more than 17. Drenched from the rain, with worn-out jeans, a faded hoodie, and a stubborn determination in her eyes, she clutched a slip of paper, an estimate, most likely. Her name was Ava. "My car's out front," she said, brushing wet hair from her face. "It won't start. Your guy said it might be the engine." Mason peered out the smudged window. A beat-up '98 Toyota Corolla sat unevenly on the gravel, looking like it had fought a war and lost. "It's gonna cost you," he muttered, glancing at the paper in her hand. "I know," she replied, voice steady despite the obvious strain behind it. "But I don't have that kind of money. I was wondering if I could try fixing it myself." Mason laughed. Not a kind laugh, but the kind that made people shrink. "You? Fix that engine? Sweetheart, this isn't some TikTok tutorial." But Ava didn't flinch. She met his eyes, firm and unblinking. "Let me try. If I fail, I'll leave. No hard feelings." The mechanics nearby chuckled, exchanging looks. Mason shrugged. He'd been in the business long enough to know this wasn't going anywhere. Maybe the girl needed to be humbled. Maybe it was a lesson she had to learn. "You've got 1 hour," he said, tossing her a pair of gloves. "Tools are over there. Don't hurt yourself." She nodded, already pulling up her sleeves. What happened next turned the mood in the garage from amusement to disbelief. Ava moved with confidence, not arrogance, but certainty. She examined the engine with the kind of methodical focus Mason hadn't seen in some of his trained staff. She checked the timing belt, cleaned the spark plugs, recalibrated the air intake sensor, and even replaced a corroded ignition coil she found under a mess of wires. The mechanics watched silently now, the laughter long gone. One of them, Diego, approached and tried to offer help, but she waved him off politely. She knew what she was doing. By the end of the hour, she wiped her hands on a rag and slid into the driver's seat. Mason stood with crossed arms, trying not to let his face betray what he was thinking. Ava turned the key. The engine purred to life like a loyal old dog. No one spoke. Mason stepped forward. "Where'd you learn to do that?" he asked, not unkindly this time. Ava hesitated, then looked up with a mixture of pride and pain in her voice. "My dad taught me. He was a mechanic, before he passed away last year." There was a beat of silence. The rain had stopped outside, but inside the garage, something else shifted. Mason's voice softened. "What was his name?" "Eli Matthews," she said, eyes glistening but holding back tears. "He used to work in East Austin. Ran a little shop called Matthews Motors." Mason blinked. "Eli?" The name hit him like a wrench to the chest. "I knew Eli. He used to come around here for parts, back before he got sick." Ava nodded. "He taught me everything he knew. He said if I ever got stuck, I should remember that an engine's just like a heart, it just needs the right rhythm." For a moment, Mason saw her not as a girl in a hoodie, but as Eli's daughter. And suddenly, the greasy garage didn't feel so cold. He cleared his throat, trying to chase the lump forming there. "Your dad was a good man. Honest. Rare." Ava smiled faintly. "He was my best friend. Why didn't you say who you were?" She shrugged. "Didn't think it would matter." But it did. It mattered more than she knew. Mason walked over to the wall and took down an old photo, faded and cracked. A picture of a younger him, standing beside a tall, bearded man in oil-streaked overalls. They were laughing, arms slung around each other's shoulders. He held it out. "This was your dad." "And this," Mason paused, the words heavy, "this garage wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. After my first shop burned down, Eli gave me his tools, helped me rebuild, told me not to give up." Ava's hands trembled as she took the photo. She'd never seen it before. He never mentioned that. "Because he didn't do it for praise," Mason said. "He did it because that's who he was." The emotional weight in the room was palpable. Ava blinked back tears, and this time, she didn't try to hide them. The hardened mechanics who had once chuckled now stood with respect in their eyes. Mason turned to his crew. "Give her a job application." Ava looked up, stunned. "What?" "You heard me," Mason said. "We could use someone who actually knows what she's doing around here." "But I'm still in school," she said. "Then weekends and after class. Flexible hours. Consider it an apprenticeship. Your dad taught you well, it'd be an honor to help keep his legacy alive." Emotion swelled in Ava's chest. She nodded, unable to speak, as Mason clapped a firm hand on her shoulder. That day, the garage didn't just fix cars. It fixed something deeper. A few weeks passed, and Ava settled in quickly. The guys who once rolled their eyes now came to her for advice. She was fast, precise, and had a sixth sense for engines. Word spread around town. People came not just for repairs but to see the girl who could breathe life into machines with hands touched by memory. One afternoon, a mother arrived with a crying baby and a minivan that wouldn't start. She was clearly overwhelmed, her face flushed with stress. Mason was about to go help when Ava stepped forward. "It's okay, I've got this," she said gently. She fixed the van, cradled the baby while the mother made a call, and even refused payment. "She looked like my mom," Ava said quietly afterward. "When Dad got sick, Mom worked 3 jobs. I remember how tired she was all the time." Mason said nothing. Just nodded, his throat too tight to speak. It was the beginning of something beautiful. Months later, Ava received a letter in the mail. A scholarship to a prestigious engineering school, full ride. Mason found her sitting on the garage steps, letter in hand, silent. "You're going," he said before she could speak. "But what about the garage?" she asked. "I don't want to leave you all behind." Mason smiled. "We'll be here. But the world needs more people like you, kind, brilliant, humble. Go show them what your dad taught you. And come back when you're ready." She stood and hugged him. A hug that said everything words couldn't. When she left for college, the entire town came to see her off. Mason gave her a wrench with her father's initials carved into the handle. "For luck," he said. Years later, Ava returned, not just as an engineer, but as the founder of a non-profit that provided technical training to underprivileged teens. She named it Matthews and Mason, where engines find their rhythm. The garage had changed. A new sign hung above the door. Ava's picture now sat beside her father's and Mason's. And behind the counter stood a girl who had once walked in from the rain, drenched and desperate, now a woman who had changed the world, one engine, one heart, at a time. The lesson was simple yet profound: never underestimate someone's potential based on what they look like or where they come from. Everyone carries a story, and sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can ignite a legacy. And in a dusty old garage in Granger, Texas, a dare once meant to humble had instead empowered, and in doing so, changed not just one life, but countless others.